we'll just get to it because we have a lot of catching up to do.
Yeah.
So, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Shorter Artist Hour, where I talk to my superbly talented friends that the world needs to know more about. And we might not talk for a full hour, but that's okay. It's the Shorter Artist Hour because I'm Susan Shorter. And today I'm talking to my friend David Pancake, who is a well-known sculptor of all things dragon, an accomplished 2D artist, and a beloved fixture to the convention circuit, and a super nice guy that I'm very proud to call my friend. So, what have you been up to lately?
Thank you, Susan. Um, getting ready for Gen Con.
You're
Uh,
going? Are you a vendor or are you in
I
the
am a
show?
vendor. Yeah.
Awesome.
So it is working out to a point where Kat is better and we can have. I mean, she still needs to have somebody with her all the time. Um, she developed epilepsy, and she's taking medication for that, but she still needs to have somebody around to
Yeah.
watch her. So between my son and myself, I mean, my son comes over and watches and visits with her. Um, I think we'll be just fine. Plus, she wants to try to attend for a short time.
Oh, I'd love to see her again. She's been so missed. I mean, do you mind telling, anybody who doesn't know what happened and why you've been gone for a while?
Well, back last Gen Con, actually, she went. We'd been noticing a lot of different symptoms, but it was right around Gen Con time. Then she wanted to go, and my son and I ended up having to, almost carry her out after the day was over. She was walking very funny and having a lot of headaches and a lot of dizziness and vision problems. Long story short, we went to see the doctor, described the symptoms, and she had a tumor about the size, about like that, in underneath her two frontal lobes, right in here. So it was operable, and
God.
Kat just immediately said, "Well, let's go. Let's take it out." Um, Her condition was getting worse all the time, but I mean, so it was necessary to get it in and get it out. So they did surgery. They cut from here to here,
Wow.
and then took the front part of her skull, and it was an 8.5 hour surgery. We thought we were completely out of the woods at the end of the 8.5 hour. Family was all there. Let's go out to eat. We'll celebrate the fact that she's gone through it. The doctor was pleased. 3 hours later, she had a seizure, and so they had to go back in, reopen all that up again. And there was a hematoma on her right frontal lobe. So she lost a few brain cells here, but 2.5 days later, she woke up, and we just took it from there. It's been a very long journey of recovering.
We've been praying for you the whole time. It had to just be absolutely terrifying. And I mean, anybody who meets Kathy just absolutely loves her. So that's just had to have shook you to your core. Can imagine.
It was a very difficult time, and especially we weren't, I mean, going into the surgery, he was saying like 4 to 10 days, and she should be out of the hospital and into rehab. Well, that didn't happen. It went to 30 days in the hospital, and then we did do rehab. I mean, the rehab place I did not like, but that was 2 months of rehab there, and brought her home, and she was having some eating issues, and I mean, spirits were really kind of low at that point. That was in January, and took her back into the hospital, and she was just really starving to death, really.
Okay.
So they put a G tube in, which is a feeding tube directly into your stomach. And so we started that, and she immediately began to get better when we got her home. and did all the feedings. And then right around April, it was like somebody, end of April, it was like somebody flipped a switch, and suddenly she could carry on a conversation. So the family immediately knew it. I mean, we were doing these Zoom calls, and we have one Zoom call where she was just like trying to say something, and when nobody knows what she was trying to say.
Yeah.
And then the next Zoom call was like perfect coherency,
That's awesome.
So you just never know. You could ask the doctor, and the doctor goes, I don't know, and there's a lot of things we just have to guess at.
Yeah. And whenever you're dealing with the brain, it's just always so scary. I know two other people that have had brain surgery. One, it was, yeah, like in and out sort of thing. And she's great, never had a problem. Also have a best friend who will, never be back to what she was. And it's heartbreaking. But so I'm so glad to hear that Kathy's coming back to full life again. That's wonderful. Have you been able? Oh, go
She's
ahead.
weak. She's very weak, but she gets around with a walker, and that's, I mean, just the fact that she's getting up and eating on her own now. The G tube came out in June. She did have a seizure again in June, so she's on medication for that. But other than that, things are really looking up.
Good. Have you been able to create any art during all of this?
I have tried. It's a lot of work. I'm doing all the housework. I'm doing and taking care of her. It's a full-time job, but I have had time to get things done, and I'm getting things.
Sure. I love him. Is he going to be mounted? That looks
Yeah, he'll be
gorgeous.
mounted, and his
Wow.
eyes light up too.
Oh, awesome. I love when you play with the LED lights. I saw that one piece on your website where it's the castle with like the zombie kind of dragon wrapping around it. That
Oh
was
yeah.
so stellar. Oh, that's so cool.
So yeah, believe it or not, this is 3D printed.
Are you serious?
I am serious. It was
I
an
would,
experiment. I got it in my head that I wanted to try this experiment. Obviously, it's pieced together,
sure.
but I have a huge 3D printer now, and it would, there's a split down the middle of this guy, and his front part of his head is two sections. The back part is two sections. Bottom jaw is two sections. The horn is something else. So it all goes back together. But it is possible to 3D print these guys.
Oh my
So
God.
I'll be doing more.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the evolution to 3D printing because when we all started sculpting, it was clay, and then Sculpey came around, and that was awesome. And then I know you also do like resins, epoxy, that sort of stuff. But now we've got the 3D printer, and you sent me some pictures. Looks like you got a couple of them down there. And
Yeah.
so, did you just buy those and tinker around and try to figure it out? Did you take a class? How did you learn how to do it?
Well, like about everything else in my long career here, it's self-taught. During the pandemic, nothing to do,
Hey,
stay in
Dan.
the house. All right, so let's see what I can learn about ZBrush. And then in the process of that, it stumbled upon a little iPad program called Nomad. So a combo of those two, I'm producing all kinds of things now. Like,
So cool.
and the detail that you can get is just freaking awesome.
I want you to show me how to do it so bad. I need to come up and play.
Oh, anytime. Mr. Moose here.
Oh, he's fantastic. Now, are these for you or are these going to go to Gen Con?
These are going to go to Gen Con.
That's so cool.
Look at the detail on the crazy boot.
That's fantastic. So you do those all in the 3D program and then it
Yeah.
just spits it out. So you don't even have to like hand sculpt them.
No.
That's wild.
But I've taken some of things that I used to hand sculpt, and I just went back and resculpted them inside the computer. I tried a few scan programs, but and I haven't really liked any of those.
Great.
So it was just easier and faster to resculpt.
Do you think you're just gonna stick with the 3D printing going forward? Oh, and don't forget, this is a piece of yours.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's the Cthulhu necklace. You know, the ease, and it's about the same cost as, you know, if you sculpt and then you make a mold and then you cast in resin, or if you sculpt in the computer and then this 3D print.
Yeah.
It's about the same cost. So I'm thinking, but the speed in which I can do things on the computer versus hand sculpting.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you miss the hand sculpting though?
well, I still have, you know, I mean, anytime I want, I can, you know, I got buckets full of the um, epoxy sculpt, and I have super sculpey and monster clay. So
Yeah.
anytime I want to do that, I can. Do I miss it? There's something to be said for text, you know, having something in your hands, but I do like I do like just sitting at the, you know, in my easy chair with my iPad and watching TV and having a blast, you know, creating stuff,
Yeah.
which is much more relaxing than, you know, having gloves on and, you know, it's a
No.
different story. Yeah.
It is. It's two different things because I also like to like get dirty and have my music blasted up and be into something. So you said you like to watch TV. I was wondering like if you do podcasts or music or what while you create.
Oh, a lot of YouTube stuff.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of you know, my interest varies. It goes from Lex Friedman to Shuttlepod Show to stuff that, you know, is tutorial, you know, like Southern FX does a really great tutorial on the iPad Nomad. There's just like lots of things you can watch on YouTube that, and I've pretty much exhausted everything that I want to watch on TV. I just get too frustrated sometimes.
Oh,
Um,
I wanted to ask you before we get too far from it, with the pandemic and what happened with Kathy and everything. If I remember right, didn't she quit her job to help with the art business that you have?
yes, she did.
So did you guys have insurance? Did you have like savings? How did you survive during that?
Nothing. And so what happened is that the income dropped significantly during the pandemic, and you know, we were getting by with PPP loans and that type of thing, and we were in such a mess because of that. Because my whole thing was not, and I'm not doing this for hire. You know, I'm doing this because I like to make things and then take it to the shows and sell. So my business plan is totally different. And I like the freedom of that.
Yeah.
But when a pandemic comes along and shuts down all of your shows, then you do pay a hefty price.
Yeah, and how could you have foreseen that? You know,
Now, you
pandemics
couldn't have foreseen it, but as it turned out that, you know, it worked for us in that the hospital got us help with funding, and um, we are really significantly thankful to those people. I mean, they were great. So some of the things that you hear, you know, about people losing their houses and everything else, I mean, I'm sure that that can happen, but in this case, it did not. We did run a GoFundMe page. I think it's still up. I need to update everybody and make sure that they know her progress. But that was great too, because it allowed us to get you know, a sit to stand lift, and you know, hospital bed and the stair lift and all the rest of it that we're still using. And without that GoFundMe page, I mean, we would have that would have been sorry homecoming.
Yeah, I'm so glad it got set up because all of us wanted to help, Nobody wants to see their friends having to go through that. It's just insane. And if conventions were still going, you would have been fine because you're always like you are the visual fixture of the convention. And one of the first places I remember seeing the first time Grant took me to one. So I saw that yeah, you sent me your resume, which most people have not done, and I felt like I didn't know you at all when I was looking at that. You have, oh my gosh, you're clearly not afraid of taking leaps, that's for sure. My biggest surprise was the machinist to a pastor. Now I'm curious, like what led you to that, and then what spurred you leaving that and then jumping into the art world completely?
Well, I mean, I was raised in okay, this is Kathy coming in, yeah. But I was raised in that. Yeah, you want something? Come on over. If you're going to
Come on in.
Well, I'm partially there.
Hi, Kat.
Yay.
It's great to see you. You look
Hey,
awesome.
Oh, she wants me to open up a can.
Okay.
Don't have the strength to open up cans and stuff.
No worries.
It's pathetic.
Hey, we got a Kathy cameo, so I'm happy.
Oh man.
You look beautiful, darling. Don't even worry.
You see, it's purple.
Yes, I love it. It's fantastic.
If only I had more hair. My daughter's got it purple, but she's got thicker hair.
Nice.
Well,
So you can tell that it's purple. This is kind of like, oh man, it almost looks like old lady hair.
No, that would be that silvery blue that I remember my grandma used to use. So you're good there.
But it's like, there it is.
It's bringing me Jim and the Holograms vibes. I should go
It's
pink.
getting curly back here. It's like, ooh, ooh. Ooh, this kind of pop is cold.
Bye. Thanks for stopping by.
I'll back out.
yeah, so both of us were raised in that faith, and then one thing led to another. But I always had a conflict I was more manipulated into it, but once I got into it, I was unhappy. Took me 7 years to figure out that I was unhappy. And then, more and more crisis of faith, and then just, got very, very fascinated with computers at that point, and this desktop publishing field. So I was just teaching myself that as I went along, and one day I found that I was out. So I just launched full hardcore into the desktop publishing field and started a business, and then kept on adding to my knowledge because it was a printing press, offset printing press that I taught myself how to use. And then we did silk screening for a while, all kinds of things there. About 97, 96 or 97, I think it was 97. That was when my dad passed away. I got the itch to start a internet service provider business. So
people, when they get interested in something, they just get a job doing it. You start a business.
well, and that one was really challenging because I knew nothing. And the guys that I talked into lending me money and becoming partners with, they knew nothing either. So, and in those days, I mean, everything was like really crazy. T1s were like $3,000 a month, something like that. And We ordered up with T1. We ordered up. I'd done some research on Cisco network access servers, so we ordered up one of those, and it comes and it's like, okay, what? You know, I had no idea how to program it.
You ever get scared, like, oh my God, how am I going to make any money back from, just putting so much of yourself and funds into it? And
There was some fear. Yeah, there was a little bit of fear. I'd be lying if I said there was no fear. But I wanted to do websites. I just got crazy into the internet. It was like I wanted to do this, and nobody did this. The internet was just being born at that point.
yeah.
So we tinkered and got the network access server weren't running, and then I got a web server up and running and an email server up and running, and just one thing led to another. And then the web server stuff kind of tied in with my print shop, desktop publishing. So we went along pretty good, and 2003, I think it was, we had an offer on the business, and I said, like, what's it like to work for somebody? That's what stupid, really stupid. But I did land a job with Tabco business forums, and I was basically doing typesetting and web, just web design, and just carried on to what I was always doing.
Yeah.
Those guys were great. I had a really good relationship with the owners. But then I was looking around and I wanted to make more money. I got greedy, and I saw that there was an art directorship open in Indianapolis, and decided to take that. That was the most hideous mistake I've ever made.
Oh yeah.
It was this guy was, well, let me put it this way. I didn't know what a grand jury was before this.
Holy shit. Yeah, it sounds like there's a story in there.
Yeah, some of it I can't talk about, but some of it was just like he was a horrible boss. There was a lot of people that worked for him, and he treated them really, really badly. And I got subpoenaed before this grand jury for following his directions. And well, I mean, he was doing all kinds of things. It was, and then
Well,
the
you
kind
don't
of
do anything
questions
to get you in trouble.
yeah, the kind of questions that I got asked, I didn't have any idea about. So it was
And
a wild ride.
you guys were in Illinois prior to this job?
Prior to this
Oh,
job, yeah, in
oh,
Illinois.
wow. So then what was after that? Is that just when you decided to jump in full time into your art?
Yeah, full
Wow.
time. Yeah, just I pulled the ripcord, but nothing happened for a long, long months. I mean, always been going to conventions, way back. A little old lady, Jenny Roller in Paris, Illinois. She had been going to conventions, and she was sculpting. Let me see if I can find something. One of these days, I'm going to repair his ear.
Oh, like little
So
children's guy.
she was making these kind of things, and there, she wasn't casting or anything. She was just, this was sculpting, and so she was taking these things, and she'd make a whole bunch of them, different kinds of things. This guy's holding a taco, but there was all kinds of little poses and stuff, and she'd end up walking away from that convention with $1,500, $2,000 in her pocket.
Wow.
And she had a big following, and she got me interested into going to the conventions, and I went, like, okay, let's see what this is all about. I fell in love with the very first convention that I ever attended, which was WindyCon. in Chicago. And there were, like in those days, like Michael Whalen, Bob Eagleton, all kinds of people that showed their art in these little bitty tiny conventions, well, we would consider not tiny conventions now. But I looked at that. I mean, just walking around in the art show, I was like, I've got to be a part of this.
Yeah.
And I'd been painting, and the reason why Jenny had latched onto me was because I had in my store all kinds of artwork that I'd painted, and I'd always thought, it'd be cool to do a book cover illustration or something like that. And I did a few, but I didn't enjoy the process of being hired. I
Yeah.
enjoyed making the art, but I didn't. I mean, if I could do it myself, I have no problems. But it was something about that. I mean, I applaud anybody that can do it, but
That's exactly how I feel with work.
it's just I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I get and it's just a really stubborn.
I want to do what I want to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, way back, I mean, I remember attending in 1991 the 50th World Science Fiction Convention in Florida. So there was like that one stood out in my mind, but there were like lots of them that I attended while I was doing all the business, Laser Set Go and One Choice, internet service provider. And even through the times that I worked for, Tabco and here in Indianapolis, I was still just churning it out. And so by the time that 2010 rolled around, I'd had it with, I'd worked for 5 years for this guy, and it was really, really bad relationship. He wasn't supposed to be able to fire anybody that was subpoenaed, but he made life miserable. So it was like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And it was a great, great feeling. I mean, it was incredibly frightening, but it was also a great feeling of just relief. Oh, now let's just do something for ourselves.
Well, and I think all that past business experience, I mean, that had to have absolutely helped, because that's one of the things that impresses me so much of you is that you're able to turn your love into a thriving business. And it was just, you approach your booth and it's just obvious that you have that business brain that so many artists lack when it comes to selling their work.
Yeah, I meet a lot of young artists who they show up at a convention and hope to sell, and they're asking themselves, well, why didn't I make $5,000 or $10,000 at this convention? They're looking over at my booth and like, what and then they're asking that question, and then I ask them, like, well, what did you bring? 20 copies of your of a print is not going to get you. I mean, you just have to total up what your inventory is, and then there's so much involved in more than just being an artist in this situation. You have to be a business person. You have to be an advertising person. You have to have a bit of logistics about moving in and moving out, and making your appointments for all of your conventions, paying for the future conventions. There's just a lot involved.
A lot.
And then you got social media on top of that now. It's just, you have to be continually moving.
For sure. And your work is really unique too. One thing that's always struck me is just like, instead of like, here's a dragon, I like dragons, you have found a way to make your creatures like interact, it feels like, with a person's home, from the trophy heads to the treasure boxes to my favorite thing that you've done is probably the vents. I think they're so creative, and people can really use those as their vents, can't they? Where it looks like a dragon is crawling through.
They can't use it as a vent. But somebody, this was all covered up in plastic, but somebody just recently posted on For the Love of Dragons, they posted a picture of this. And then that picked up like 8,000 likes, and it was like,
Nice.
holy crap. I have been doing nothing but making these things. And that's not, it's more than just art. It's making stuff.
Yeah.
Because you got to make the box, and you got to, wire it, and then you got to paint your little dragons to go in it. And then, it's just it's time consuming.
But it's just so smart though, because so many people, you can only have so many tchotchkes sitting on your desk, that you found a way to be like, oh, well, you got a space there on your wall. Oh, well, there's that, you can put that vent thing over here. Oh, well, you need something to put your jewelry in. It's like you've thought of so many different ways that people are going to need your work. So I love it. It's great.
I make things for myself, like things that I want.
Yeah.
And then that turns out to be, some things don't take off, but some things do, like that vent dragon. Holy crap.
Yeah.
I think I introduced those in 2015, and I have a hefty price on them, but because of this, it's time consuming and materials and stuff. But I think I'm well over 2,500 sold, which turns out, by the way, to be about $500,000 worth.
Oh my Lord.
So if I could only think of those every day, then
I'm gonna have to take lessons from you. So I'm just starting out this whole 100% freelance thing. And yeah, it's pretty terrifying. But I did want to ask you, what is it about dragons that made you like just totally turned you on creatively?
I love science fiction.
Is there a book that hit you as a kid or something?
I'll back up and I'll tell you a story.
Sure.
I had, my mom put us into church school, and the church school wasn't quite up to speed. They weren't quite doing, or at least for me anyway. And so they had these tests that they had to comply with for the state, and these achievement tests. And so they gave me an achievement test when I was in the 8th grade, and I took the achievement test, and it was like, well, it was bad. It was really bad. Like, wow, you're in the 8th grade, but you're only performing at about a 3rd grade level. Your reading level is really low. What's going on here? And they had the parent teacher conference, talking about how my performance was doing. So that summer, I got to go and stay with my cousin, and he had a massive comic book collection. And at first it just began, like I'd look at the pictures. I wasn't reading, I was just looking at the pictures. But pretty soon that led me, like I would really want to know what the story's going on. So I would slow down and I would start to read, and I kept on reading, and I kept on. We would go out and we'd mow people's lawns and go to the comic book store and come back and do some more reading, do that, just over and over again. Yeah. About August, I thought, I was in the comic book store, but there was also some books there. It's like sci-fi section, and I saw one sci-fi section that was Perry Roden, which was it was a German book, whole series that was translated into English, and I was as interested because this was about the same time that the space program was going well, and I'd stumbled upon Star Trek, and so I was interested in space, and I wanted a comic book that dealt with space. But the guy said, "Well, this is the best I got right here. You'll really enjoy this book." Yeah. And I thought, man, there's no pictures, except for this one picture on the front. And so I said, okay, fine, I'll take it. And I it started a cascade of books, just
Love
reading one
that.
right after another. By the time that I was came back to school, I had read something like 20 books, 23 books actually, and they had the new achievement entrance test, and so I took that, and then I got called to the principal's office, and the principal said, "We got a problem here. How'd you cheat?" And I said, "I didn't cheat." And he said, "Well, we're going to give you one more chance here, and you're going to sit at my office, and we're going to see you on this new test I'm going to give you." And I took the test, did even better. My
Awesome.
reading level had jumped from that third grade level all the way up to a freshman in college. And I was off onto a lifelong love of books, and just book covers, all the that's really where the first love came.
It's the best story. I love that.
One of the things I discovered, though, is that I was much, much better at drawing organic shapes or sculpting organic shapes. My mom had done wedding cakes and all kinds of birthday cakes, and so she'd always do little animals and things. And
Yeah.
so I got to tag along on doing those kind of things with her. And then when I met Jenny was doing these little sculpty dragons, and so I just said, I wonder if I can do that.
Yeah.
One thing led to another.
That's interesting that you mentioned the cake decorating thing, because I think that was one of the things that made me realize, that you can have art everywhere. My mom used to do that too. And like I loved Miss Piggy, so she'd make me a Muppet cake. I remember one time she made my brother a tractor cake by putting the two round ends up as the tires and then filled in there. Just that level of creativity in your home, I think that just does something to a kid's brain. And
It does.
yeah,
It does a lot for you. Triggers off, the desire to create.
yeah,
So it was just a combination of things. My interest in sci-fi, fantasy, and like I said, the ability to create something organic was easier for me than creating a robot or something like that.
I'd be
And
curious. Do you remember what comic book it was or what artist it was? Like if I was that artist, I would love to hear that story.
well, there was always Tarzan, and I loved X-Men
Yeah.
and Spider-Man, and all of them were, I mean, it was those initial stories that I got involved with are way different from what's happening now, but I
Sure.
still love what's happening now too. So,
Yeah. So what does inspire you now? Are there any movies out there that's recent or TV shows or anything that's just kind of like relit a fire, or any old ones that you're like, oh, for me, it's everybody knows the never ending story. That was a big
oh, I love that. Yes.
catalyst for me. Yeah.
That was very cool. And like I said, I've always loved Star Trek.
Yeah.
I've become a little less disenchanted with some of the more recent things because it stepped away from Gene Roddenberry's initial vision of um, moral tales. You
Yeah.
know, I
You ever
always
do
loved that.
any? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I always loved that you could learn something from. Next Generation was just as equally good at it. Where you would see today's society, but in a different light, and you would have a different philosophy presented to you, so that you may not have looked at it that way before, but now you're thinking about it, and it becomes something a little bit more acceptable when you're presented from this point of view rather than coming down over the top of your head with with
Yeah.
something else. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. Science fiction to me has always been about exploring, social norms and psychology and philosophy, deep into philosophy. So,
Oh, I love philosophy. I took a few courses of it in college. It had nothing to do, with my degree. I just find it fascinating. And
Well,
especially,
I mean, of course, when you're doing my my uh, education was, or my BA was in theology, and then I came up really close to doing my master, finishing my master. But um, I was, I mean, I love the philosophy that I got. I sampled through all of that, but it did cause, you know, a I don't know, crisis of faith or whatever you want to call it.
yeah,
Um,
understandable. I studied theology a little bit. One thing I took from it was just that you can find a lot of parallels through the different religions of different stories and all of that, like the story of the flood comes, up in different religions and stuff. So it's interesting, but yeah, it can be a little conflicting on the soul.
yeah, yeah. Always felt like I had a house of cards, and it was just any kind of a little um influence would just make it all collapse. But and then I guess eventually that's what happened. But anyway, I mean, much happier now.
That's good. Well, I'm excited to see you at Gen Con. You showed me a couple of the things there. Do you have anything else? What's your plan for the booth this year? Your big return.
Well, I got bigger and badder things here. Oh man, this is heavy.
When is Gen Con? It's August the first weekend? No.
First
Oh,
weekend of August.
fantastic. Now, is he 3D as well?
Hmm?
Is he 3D printed as well?
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
beautiful.
And then this one was entirely created in Nomad, little $15 app on the
Oh,
iPad Pro. But they have a tool called Clay Add, and so I was just doing this kind of, stroking through with Clay Add,
yeah,
and I love the way it looked like a, leathery, skin texture on there.
for sure. That's fantastic. Now, do you then go in and hand paint all of these?
Yeah, that's where the real challenge is.
So you're still putting in hours, even if they are 3D printed.
Oh yeah, sculpting. I mean, what I've found is that the more detailed I get, of
Yeah,
course, the more the longer it takes to paint them.
yeah,
Um, like little, like this guy. There's just tons of little things on there, and it's not just one. You think, well, it's not just one color for the paint, for the pants, and one color for the jacket or whatever. But,
yeah.
but there's tons of little two tones that you have to include to make it look right.
It would take forever. Are you painting them all the same? Are you doing variations?
Those guys, I'm pretty much painting all the same, but a lot of other variations. I I've always loved the metallic look on dragons, and so it's been a big key part of it. Um, and I've loved the detail of putting the scales. I mean, making the scales on dragons, like this guy here.
Oh, absolutely. Nice.
So even when you're sculpting this in the computer, the scale, in order to get it right, it has to be done one at a time. So you just start at the tail and you build up so that you can get this variation in the size of the scale and the direction of the scale.
I got that exact same tip from, see if I can find it or get it without making too much noise. But I made this guy for me because I loved the Beetlejuice movie.
Oh
And
yeah.
I set my cards here in the center and I put it on DeviantArt when DeviantArt was still a thing, and he's got all his little sharp teeth and stuff, but they're not in the best shape anymore. He's pretty old. But I actually had the guy that created the real one from the movie get on and made a comment, that it looked good, but that I should, for more realistic scale, I should do exactly what you just said. Cause all I did was just press in the marks. Cause I was thinking I wasn't going to sell him or anything. He was just something fun for me. But yeah, that's a fantastic tip for anybody who's going to do it. And next time I do anything with scales, I will do it like you suggested. But
Uh,
yeah,
with clay, it's just pinch and flatten and then push down. And then you
okay.
just keep doing that and just build up. It's much the same in the computer, except it goes a little faster.
Really.
But you can get that grain going. If you look at an animal, like a dog or a cat, you can see what direction the fur is going in, and you just emulate that direction when you're doing scales, and works out great. But doing it one at a time like that allows you to do variation in the size, so that when you're getting around, when you're doing the hands, they're the tiny little scales, and then
Yeah.
when it gets around to the shoulder, they're bigger, and then when it leaves the shoulder and goes into the neck, it's even bigger yet. So you have that look, and that started with me with long ago with just clay. But what I like about all of that, even the tediousness of it, because some people will like really freak out, like I couldn't do that or whatever. But what I like about it is that if you just let your mind go, it's
Yeah.
almost like meditation, where you're not really conscious of what your hands are doing, but your hands are doing it. If you put too much thought into it, then you get you get too much variation, and you can really screw it up if you put too much thought. But if you just let it go, and you know, it'll just flow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can see it as meditative. But it's interesting talking about the 3D printing, where we're talking about how advancements in the computer world has helped us as far as creating and stuff, which kind of leads me to, I know you have some opinions on the whole AI bullcrap that's going on. So I'm just curious if you would like to share with the class what your feelings are.
Well, I did like what Tom said, Tom Fleming,
Yeah,
in the interview. Um, one thing we got to say about this right up front is that it is not going to go away.
I agree with
There's too much greed and too much money involved, and there will be those companies that if they can get away with using AI, not even if it's mediocre art, they're still going to do it. And when we're looking at AI, there's lots of benefits there. I mean, obviously, we don't want anybody. If all the mundane jobs are eliminated with AI, it's going to be an impact on to those individuals. But overall, those individuals, I mean, I don't know of anybody that says, I really like my job at the grocery store of uh, operating the check register. I don't think anybody actually really enjoys that, because of the long hours and doing the same thing over and over again. So those kind of jobs, if they go away, I mean, that would probably be a long-term benefit, if that person can be redirected into a more helpful and beneficial area.
but they still have to pay their bills
They
while
still
they're
have to pay their
heading that
bills.
direction. Yeah.
Now, my other thinking on this is that chess is, we've invented a computer that can beat us at chess, and invented a computer that can beat us at Go, but we don't stop playing chess and we don't stop playing Go.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we are. I mean, I'm not going to say something like, well, now the computer can do it. I'm going to quit. It's because I enjoy what I'm doing.
Mhm.
And I think that we're going to have to find ways of enjoy what we're doing and sharing it with others. And I think there'll be others out there that will respond and saying, look, I like what you're doing. It's not just, some cheap solution.
Mhm.
That being said, I like what Tom said about exploring how it can help us, and it can. And I've been tinkering around with a couple of the AIs. And if you ask it to do something and it generates, like you can say, I want to look at a dark forest with some kind of a mystical landing inside, maybe a magical spot. Show me what that would look like. And then if you can get that into your head, as you can create your own, you can go off, or you can modify that and you can change it and move it.
But how do you feel of the ethics of it, that it's all been built on stealing that imagery from other artists?
All artwork is derivative.
But with your own spin, like these people are actually making it. Like this
Now,
computer sucking up your image, and you can put in a person's name and a tree, and you'll get like variations of the tree that they actually painted.
well, that has to go away.
Yeah.
That's it. Yes. But we got to also note that this is creating a discussion that we are all having.
Yeah.
And these companies that are creating these AIs are also listening, or at least we hope they're listening.
Hopeful. Yeah.
But it's part of the discussion, and I toy around with ChatGPT. I asked ChatGPT about the whole issue, and it definitely comes out in exactly what we're saying. That's got to go away.
Yeah.
But acknowledging that our artwork is derivative, meaning that, and a lot of artists don't get this, but the farther you vary from, if you want to really create an alien, or if you want to create a dragon, okay, let's go with something familiar. If you want to create a dragon and you're going to create the dragon wings, a lot of artists, I've seen this happen before, will create, rather than 1, 2, 3, 4 spines for the wings, with a thumb being the little claw that comes out there,
Mhm.
Rather than do that, they'll create like 7 in there. And you look at it and you think, nah, it just doesn't look right to me. It's disturbing to me. It's like, well, okay, I'll take it for the fact that it is disturbing, but it's not really what I want to see.
Yeah.
And if you try to sell that same thing to people, you're going to end up with that same type of resistance, because you're too far afield from what we know instinctively. Because we all look at bat wings, and we also know what the bat wing looks like, right? The bat wing is basically the hand with really long fingers
Yeah.
and webbed in between, with that little thumb being a little claw out there. And when we create something, you can create something that's diverse, or like a dragon. Dragon's not real, but if you take that piece of information from the bat wing, it looks more real and sells the product more.
For sure.
But it's derivative. It's from nature itself. It's derivative.
I think we'll always have people that collectors and art directors and such that want the human elements, that want that type of artwork. But we're also going to have the companies that just want, just thinking about the bottom dollar, and they're going to take the bargain basement art or whatever they can get from this computer system. But one issue is, okay, say artists use it for a tool. How do you feel about people that aren't artists now getting art jobs from, or selling their work, selling their prints and such from using AI when they're not artists, but they're calling themselves artists now. That's a big trend that's going on.
Yeah, it is.
That's
I
like me kicking ass on Guitar Hero and saying I'm a guitarist, but I'm not. I just used the software.
right. Well, even that one Facebook page I mentioned earlier, For the Love of Dragons, which somebody posted my event dragons on there, which I'm really thankful for. But
Yeah.
you know, always comes better if somebody else does it than you do it. But
Yeah.
on that same Facebook page, there is tons of people doing that very thing where they're creating you know, the AI prompt and then having it out there and then trying to sell it.
Yeah.
It's going to get interesting.
Very, very much so. My goodness.
I
So,
I just don't really feel, I don't, maybe I'm looking at the wrong way, but I've never felt competitive with another artist.
yeah.
I've always felt inspired by another artist.
Yeah.
Um, I've run into artists who feel very competitive, and feel very, you know, I don't get along with them too well. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
look, I like what you're doing, but let's not hang out. Um, I just never felt competitive, and I don't feel competitive right now anyway, with this AI stuff. I like what I want to do. I'm doing it because I want to do it. And if I can gain an ounce of inspiration from it, okay. But I don't think that we should stop fighting when it concerns artists being ripped off.
That's my big thing with it is the ethics. Other than that, I'm cautiously watching it, but I don't feel threatened by it at this moment. Um, but the ethics of it is what bother me. So because I am one of those people that my art was stolen to train this beast that people are using for free and spitting out the images, you know? So that's where my issue with it lies. But I don't fault anyone for having their own opinions about it because it's all new to all of us. And it's just interesting to talk about amongst our industry and just to see what everybody's viewpoints are.
We're not the only ones that's going to be impacted.
Oh yeah. Have you seen all of it that's going on in Hollywood right now?
Oh yeah, yeah. Let's take your image and your voice and let's you can set aside over there. We won't pay you, and we'll just go ahead and
Oh
make movies without you.
yeah,
Um,
that's creepy.
it is creepy. Um, then there is the, you know, I mean, we're delayed right now with seeing cars being driven by computers, but that is coming, and that's an even bigger, you know, monetary incentive for companies.
That scares me. That's taken away my freedom. And yeah, the whole driving the car thing freaks me out. And the flying cars. I'm just waiting for the first idiot to crash into a kid's playground or something. Because I saw there was oh my gosh, the federal, I'm screwing up all the words with this right now, but there were some federal grants or something that was okayed, and they gave an actual year of when the flying car was going to supposedly be released if this company can provide it.
With AI control.
Yeah.
The same thing for, I mean, you know, we have Isaac Asimov way back in the 50s coming up with robots that could emulate humans. But now we have Tesla coming on strong, and with their Mr. Robot or whatever it is. And then there's another company that's going to release a robot for the general public before the end of the year, that you can buy, and he's a humanoid robot, and he can, you know, do things around the house and whatever, and he's connected with Chat GPT. So it's a brave new world.
Yeah. All those
Uh,
sci-fi movies are coming true, and we're gonna get to see it.
yeah, I don't know. I've been listening to a lot to Yuval Noah Hari, who wrote *Sapiens*, a history of mankind. Great book. I also did 21 lessons for the 21st century and Homo Deus. All of really, really impactful books on philosophy. If you want a good philosophy book that's has a lot to do with history, those are it.
Awesome.
Um, and he was recently interviewed on Lex Friedman's show. Fantastic outlook, but he is very frightful of what's going to happen, not because of the Terminator style of threat, but because of these robots will know us better than we do know ourselves, or the chat GPT will eventually know us better than we know ourselves, will be manipulating us in ways that we will create a spiritual prison for ourselves if we're not careful. Um, and all of the other concerns about, the emergent properties of what's happening in AI, where you have a translation robot that doesn't know, or translation AI that doesn't know a certain language, but within just a short amount of time, 2 or 3 hours, can decipher and translate a whole new language that they didn't even expect it to be able to do, and they have no explanation as to how it learned. Kind of frightening.
Yeah, it's very unnerving. Oh, speaking of the future, on a lighter note, um, what are your creative plans for the future? Do you have any big sculptures, on the forefront, or more conventions? Or are you just going to do Gen Con and then just see how that works? Or
I'm planning on doing Dragon Con as well,
oh,
and
great.
possibly uh, Gamehole Con in
What's that?
Wisconsin.
Okay.
I do really well at gaming conventions, um,
See that.
or RPG, tabletop RPG conventions, and Gamehole Con is one that I really like. My favorite is Gary Con, which is put on by the Gygax family. And
That in
just a
Gary,
really,
Indiana?
it's up in where Gen Con used to be, which was Lake Geneva, Wisconsin,
Oh, okay.
where TSR all, emerged and all of that. But you go there and it's a very intimate little convention, and it has about 3,000 people that show up, but they're they're like movie stars. Like Todd Stashwick showed up at the convention this year. I didn't get to see him because Jeff did it for me, my son.
Yeah.
Um, and he goes, "Well, yeah, Dad, the starship captain from Picard bought one of your statues." I'm like, "Oh shoot, yeah, that's right."
Oh, it's too bad you weren't there for it, though. Oh,
Oh yeah, no
did
kidding.
he get pictures?
But they always have a nice group that come up. Like Critical Role people that show up there. Um, uh, you just get a whole bunch of movie actors and editors, um, movie producers that show up.
It's fantastic.
So only about 3,000 people, but I always do really well there.
What if you got approached by some movie guy saying, "Hey, will you make these creatures for my flick?" Is that something that you might ever be interested in?
Maybe when I was younger,
Yeah.
I might possibly been tempted, but not anymore. I just, like I say, I just I like the creating something and then interacting and selling it.
Yeah.
And then I'm done with it. I don't have to think about it anymore. Um,
Do you ever do Ren fairs? I would think that your stuff would sell well at one of those.
I've often thought about doing the Ren fairs. The buy-in is a little steep.
I'm doing my first one this year and it's pretty cheap. It's the Clayshire Castle one.
Well, I heard you talk about that,
Yeah.
and I thought maybe, yeah, maybe. But if you, I mean, like for instance, the one that's in Ohio, in Cincinnati, near Cincinnati, not too far away, a couple of hours, and but you're still looking at, buying a booth, and they want you to invest in that booth, and it can be 15 to 20, $30,000 for that booth, but you don't own the property, you just own the booth.
No, thank you.
They do well there.
Yeah,
You know,
I have my friend Steve Najarin. He does dragon paintings, that sort of thing, and I've seen where he's got one of those, and it looks so cool. But yeah, that's a lot of money. I would be nervous.
I know artists though that do only a couple of those a year, and they make a killing off of it.
It could be worth it. I don't know. I would just want to know how my work would do there before I laid down that kind of money.
Well, you can rent a tent. Oh, one of my friends rented a tent, and he posted a river runs through it, and he showed this picture where he had artwork piled on either side, and there's a little stream coming down through
Oh
because of the
no.
rain. So yeah, he had some troubles. Of course, then you're exposed to the elements. You're sweating to death, or you're being rained on, or um, it's
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm always nervous doing outdoor festivals. I just stopped doing them after we had one big rain one with the Spencer Pride one up here. And those guys are fantastic, and it's right in my town. But yeah, just setting up, and you never know what you're going to get weather-wise. So this Renaissance Fair is the first outdoor thing I've done, but I've got a big white tent, a monster one. So I'm hoping that'll help. And if I have to buy a tabletop air conditioner, I'll do it and just put
Yeah.
ye old AC on it or something to where it will fit
Yeah.
the period thing. Eh, yeah. Well, do you have any big tips for up and comers before we wrap up?
Um, Takes more than talent, and your talent can always be improved by practice, practice, practice. But be prepared. I mean, if you want to make a successful go of it, you have to, you have to wear many, many hats. And nobody's going to just hand it to you on a platter. Some people get really lucky, I suppose,
Yeah.
but most of us have to work, and it can be very, very rewarding. You have to, some artists I've talked to, and I look at their work, and it's like, you're creating this at this age? Wow, fantastic. You're so good. But they're so shy, they can't sell their work, or they don't know how to do the business part of it, or all of these things can be overcome. But you have to talk to yourself seriously, and you have to really, like, you're going to do this. You're going to go out there. You're going to meet people. You're going to, shake hands, and sell your work.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, okay, we know you're going to be at Gen Con, and I can put that up with the dates, and Dragon Con. And what was the third one?
Game Con.
Okay.
I normally I do like, before the pandemic, I was doing like 26 cons a year, back to back. It's every other weekend, sometimes three. They pile on, like a whole month of solid cons. I can't do that anymore. It's just too much. So
Oh,
I'm just picking and choosing the ones I want to do. One other thing that I would say too is that there's a lot of these little conventions that are still around, like WindyCon, in conjunction here in Indianapolis. I sent off a box to Baycon in San Francisco or San Diego, one of the two. I can't remember. Balticon, all these little bitty conventions. Some of them are not so little. Some of them are bigger than others, but they have a mail-in process where you can box up your art
And then
fill
do
it
they
all
sell it?
out and fill out your forms. You ship it off to them. They set it up for you and sell it. And then they, whatever's not sold, they box up, send back to you.
That's pretty great.
Yeah, I love those.
Nice.
And the really funny thing about this, and of course, some of them are getting a little, they're catching on and they're like, yeah, we should probably charge for this. But a lot of them don't. A lot of them just, 25 bucks and that's the hanging fee. And you get a check back in the mail for, $1,500 and like,
I wish there was a website, there might even be, that has like all the conventions listed. It's like this one, provides that service, or this one's really good for fantasy art. This one's more comic heavy, that sort of thing. To where a person that's now taking on more conventions can look through and be like, hey, I might want to try these out, or I'll skip
well,
these.
there are a couple of those.
Yeah.
There, I used to have links. I've kind of lost touch here because of the pandemic and Kathy. But if I think of, I'll send them to you and then you can post those as well.
Awesome. That'd be great. And speaking of websites, where can people go to get your stuff and see your portfolio? And
davidleepancake.com. Also do Etsy under the same name. All of the Facebook, Instagram, all of that as well.
fantastic. Well, and also I just got to say, you and Kathy are like held in such high esteem. Everybody I talked to that's met you, everything from Jacob Walker, and Phil Velikan, even my friend Kelly Sparks, when I posted that, I was going to interview you, she said she met you at a con down in Louisville and you were just the nicest guy. And just like, how does it feel to be one of the most beloved people in the con circuit?
Pretty nice, I guess. But the bottom line is always be kind.
Yeah.
Always be kind, always be gracious, and it's not all about me. It's sometimes it's the interaction between people that matter.
Absolutely.
So yeah, there's that.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. Do you have any last words you want to throw out there before we wrap it up?
Oh, you mentioned Jacob and Phil.
Yeah.
Great guys. They helped with Kathy's. They came over and they helped me build the hospital bed and put together some stuff. But yeah, I don't know. Lots of gratitude towards them. And there's so many artists out there that I just absolutely love. Your work is fantastic. We love that. Kathy especially loved the Gandalf.
Oh,
Just was
nice.
thrilled with it.
Aw. Well, I might have
just-
to make sure she gets a print of it.
she
Okay.
really loved that one. I did too. I thought it was great.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm going to have that with me at convention. I'm going to be at Gen Con, but just there to help friends and to visit and stuff like that, and help give people breaks. And so I'll see you guys then. Hopefully she can pop in for a little bit. But well, I'm going to get off here, and I can't thank you enough for coming on my show and gracing us with your presence and showing us your dragons. And I can't wait to see you at Gen Con.
Oh, you too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
You guys
much.
have an awesome night.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.